On behalf of the House Democratic Caucus, I want to thank each of the members of the press corps for being here this afternoon. My caucus gathered together this afternoon at about 11:30 for the last hour and a half to discuss the potential of a special session on the heels of the Supreme Court's decision that ruled the cigarette fee unconstitutional, a decision that our caucus said would happen many months ago, argued that we shouldn't have voted on it, shouldn't have passed it, that in fact we would end up wasting state taxpayer dollars and be right back here again in August or September, and we've been proven correct. Unfortunately, we've had to waste those tax dollars and waste the time of our citizens to get here. But we met today to do one thing principally, and that was to try to meet with folks from the other side of the aisle. We reached out to the governor's office and invited the governor to attend our caucus meeting today, and unfortunately she wasn't able to attend, but members of her cabinet did, or members of her staff did attend. We had former Senator Jim Williamson, her chief of staff, Chris Benge, the director of OMES, Preston Dorflinger, and then Jill Geiger, who also works with OMES. I forget Jill's exact title, but she's great, and we appreciate their efforts. They all came together today to visit with us to kind of share some ideas. I'll be very honest with you. What we did was put forth the plan that we put forth way back in March. Our Restoring Oklahoma plan, we believe, is the only plan on the table that really raises revenue in a legal and constitutional way and helps to fund core services of state government like education, health care, and public safety. It's about $1.4 billion worth of revenue that takes ideas from the House Republicans, like the cigarette tax, takes ideas from the governor's plan to raise service taxes, those that specifically don't hurt middle-class families, and then does what we really believe needs to happen. It addresses the root causes of our financial problems in this state, which was unbelievably low tax cuts for high earners, gross production tax cuts, and tax credits and exemptions that have helped waste $4 billion in this state. That's our plan. We offered it in March, we offered it again in May, and we're offering it again now. We should say that the four folks from the governor's office who came were very generous with their time and were great in listening to us and discussing what a future special session may look like. I will say this, though, our caucus is disheartened because what we had heard as rumored, we found today to be fact, and that is that there is no plan, that the Republican majority, the governor, the pro tem, and the Speaker of the House have no plan. We've had a plan for months. They've known for months that their bill was more than likely unconstitutional, had plenty of time to sit down together to discuss the ideas as a way to find recurring constitutional revenue to help balance this budget and avoid devastating cuts to DHS, the Health Care Authority, and the Health Department. But today, when we essentially asked them what their plan was, they said that they don't have one, that the governor has met individually with the Speaker and the pro tem, but the three of them have not even met all together yet, and that that's supposed to happen sometime this week, we believe. And we're grateful that they're going to do that, but we really question as to why it took them this long. Why it took them this long to offer up a plan. In fact, what they voted on in the last few days of session that was ruled unconstitutional, that wasn't even really their plan to begin with. They sort of threw that together with duct tape and baling wire at the last minute. A new car tax that nobody had ever heard from, an electric vehicle tax, and a cigarette fee that nobody ever knew that they were going to try to do it that way. So they didn't have a plan for the 4 months of session, and they don't have a plan today. And so we're calling, as House Democrats, calling on the governor, the Speaker, and the pro tem to adopt our plan. To adopt a bipartisan plan, the Restoring Oklahoma plan, that takes care of the needs of the state citizens in Oklahoma and does so in a legal and constitutional way with recurring revenue. We are worried that if they bring us back into special session at the end of this month or at the first part of September, that we may just be spinning our wheels, because until they offer up a real plan, a bipartisan plan, I think the people of Oklahoma are going to look at wasting more of their tax dollars, and a greater likelihood that those core services for kids and senior citizens are looking at devastating cuts. So with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions.
The cigarette tax, I mean, do you want a deal? There's no way you guys are going to vote for that without gross production tax increase?
So what we've said all along was that our caucus would be able to vote their conscience on the cigarette tax. And when the first cigarette tax went up for a vote, 12 members of my caucus, nearly half of my caucus, voted for it, and more than enough votes if the Speaker could lead his team and get his team to vote for a bill that he says is so crucial to this state. If the governor could lead her own Republican caucus members and get them to vote for a bill that she said was so crucial for the future of this state, but they couldn't get it done, even with 12 members of our caucus, half the team, when they only really needed 3. And so if they want to offer up another cigarette tax, I would venture a guess that it would probably come down along those same lines. Those members of our caucus who want to vote for it will, and it'll be they'll have enough votes if they can lead their own team to get it passed. They haven't done it yet. I doubt they'll do it this time. And so if they want all 26 or all 27 of us now, if they want all 27 of our votes, then they need to offer up more than a Band-Aid on a bullet hole, which is all the cigarette tax is. We're not in this mess because cigarettes are too cheap. We're in this mess because they cut gross production taxes too low. We're not in this mess because cigarettes are too cheap. We're in this mess because they cut income taxes too low. And so our Restoring Oklahoma plan restores both of those. If they want all 27 of them, of us, which to allow their far-right base who just love these cuts, who love apparently hurting the citizens of this great state, if they want to allow them to kind of take a walk and not vote for it, and they need our team to get it across the finish line, then they need to do something more than just a patch. They need to actually fix the core structural problems in our state budget, and those involve income tax and gross production taxes.
You were offered by the leadership in the Senate, I believe, that they would go to 4% on gross production tax. Is that not good enough?
So what we were offered originally by the Senate President Pro Tem was 5% on only new wells. And I took it to the caucus, and the caucus agreed to accept 5% on only new wells, which would only bring in about $12 million. But it was something that our caucus felt like it was a good enough compromise that we would then help support the cigarette tax. After our caucus had agreed to do it in good faith, we went back into that negotiating room, and the Pro Tem of the Senate and the Speaker said, sorry, we can only offer you 3, that we didn't mean it when we offered you 5. They then came back and said, well, we'll do 4%, but only on new wells. Mind you, that brings to about $6 million. They're asking for us to vote for $215 million worth of tax increases on those who smoke. And they asked us to vote for $100-something million on tax increases on people who buy cars. So $300 million on the backs of middle-class families and poor folks. At the same time, they asked the oil and gas industry to contribute $6 million more. That is inequitable, and it is immoral. And our caucus knows full well that we're not in this mess because people don't pay enough when they buy their car or they don't pay enough when they buy a pack of cigarettes. We're in this mess because we've got $500 million worth of gross production tax cuts that have been given away, and just getting $6 million of that back is not enough to truly balance the budget in a way that is beneficial to middle-class families. We want them to honor their word. If they want to stay at 5% on just new wells, we believe it ought to be 7%. Or if they want to go to 5%, we said let's do 5% on all wells, which would bring in several $100 million next year alone. But we've negotiated off of our 7%. We've been negotiated off of our on all wells position. And we're willing to accept their original offer of 5% on new wells only. And if they'll stick to that, if they'll be men and women of their word, then our caucus will help them to pass the gross production tax increase, and will help deliver the votes for the cigarette tax. But if they won't, if they want to continue to renege on the initial offer that they made us, then I think they're going to find it very difficult to get their own caucus to support a cigarette tax that apparently dozens of their own members don't even support.
What's your caucus's position if the Republicans come back and do across-the-board cuts to make up the $215 million?
If the Republican majority wants to come back and not find recurring revenue and instead just cut DHS funding, cut funding for mental health, and cut funding for hospitals in the state of Oklahoma, then they'll have to answer to the people, and they'll have to answer to their maker for those immoral decisions. We won't stand by for them to come back in and just make more cuts, understanding that they've already cut education in this state deeper than any other state in the nation. They've already cut higher ed deeper than any other state in the nation. They've already cut reimbursement rates so low that 12 hospitals have filed for bankruptcy. We can't go any further. When the lieutenant governor of this great state says that we don't need to find new revenue, they just need to learn to live within their means. My argument to the lieutenant governor and those Republicans who believe that is we tried to live within our means. They gave them away. When they gave $1.5 billion worth of income tax cuts away, $2 billion for the tax credits and exemptions, and $500 million in gross production tax cuts, those were the means by which we were going to educate our kids. Those are the means by which we were going to keep our hospitals open. Those are the means by which we were going to pave our roads. And they gave them away. And now they have the audacity to look at us and say, live within your means. It's as if they quit their full-time job and said, suck it up, Buttercup. And you know what? That's just not how it works. And so we're going to stand firm on the side of the people in this great state and try to fight to bring those means back into this budget so that hospitals and health care and schools and roads can be invested in.
Speaking of school funding, Oklahoma City Public Schools announced this morning that they will be voting on whether or not they want to sue the legislature about the municipal school funding that they've got. What's your response to that?
Our caucus appreciates the leadership of the Oklahoma City Public Schools for doing their job. standing up and fighting for the kids in their classroom, those kids that have seen budget cuts come down, seen class sizes grow, seen not just an increase in alternatively certified teachers, but a huge increase in just emergency certified teachers. People who've got no real background in educating are now in those classrooms teaching their kids. That is a dangerous thing for the future of those students, and they have waited. They've waited for the governor and the Republican leadership in this building to stand up and do the right thing and increase funding for public education. And instead, what they've seen are more tax cuts, a refusal to raise gross production taxes, a refusal to get rid of a refusal to get rid of wasteful tax credits. And so we applaud the leadership of the Oklahoma City Public School District for standing up and saying if the Republican leadership in this state won't do the right thing, then they're going to do like the folks in Kansas did, take them to court, and hopefully the court will force this legislature to come to their senses and fund education appropriately.
What would you say to parents who are concerned about school funding right now?
So we want to make sure, our caucus wants to ensure that all parents in this state understand the power to change this state is in their hands. We are not in this mess because somebody just gave the folks in charge the power to govern. We're in this mess because voters put these folks in office thinking that they would lead them in a right way, and they have failed them. The leadership in this building have failed them, and so they have an opportunity by demanding that their elected officials change the gross production tax cuts, change the income tax cuts for high earners, get rid of wasteful tax credits and exemptions. They must demand that of their elected officials, and if they don't get that in a special session, and if they don't get that in next session, then when they go to the ballot box next November, they must throw those people out and replace them with people who will. Anything else? Dale, did you have a question?
No, it was
Asked already.
Have you
No.
had any conversations with McCall?
I did. So I had a late night conversation with the speaker. He called me. I will say this. I don't have the letter in front of me, but several weeks ago, in anticipation of what we thought would happen, I sent a letter from my office to the governor's office, to the pro tem's office, to the speaker's office, and to the minority leaders in the Senate's office, saying, hey, it looks like we're going to have a special session. Now, we believe this is going to be ruled unconstitutional. Why don't we get together before this happens? I heard nothing. I heard from Senator Sparks, but I heard nothing from the governor, nothing from the pro tem, nothing from the speaker. And it wasn't until the day that the Supreme Court, I believe it was August the 10th, it wasn't until the day that the Supreme Court ruled it unconstitutional that I got a response to my initial letter from the speaker saying, thank you for your letter. Now let's visit. You know what? We're a day late and a dollar short. We should have been visiting a month ago. We should have been doing it right when we were back in session without having to waste taxpayer dollars. And so I was grateful to take the speaker's call. I texted him and said I'd love to visit with you, and he called me back, and we had a nice conversation. But what I learned in that conversation was that there is no plan. I asked him what he wants to do. He basically wants to avoid a special session. He would like to use some cash flow reserve money and some rainy day money to just float us into next year, which all that does is make a bigger hole in the budget for next year, and also eliminates resources that could be used for supplementals when we come into next session. And so there is no plan. And so I appreciate the speaker calling me after I reached out to him. But it's a little late now, and it's also really late in the game to be looking at $200 million worth of budget cuts and to have no plan to solve them.
If we skip a special session, these agencies have already been told to resubmit their budget based on these cuts. And the effectiveness is felt. We're still, I don't know, six months out from the next legislative session, the next chance that you guys are going to be able to reappropriate.
Mm-hmm.
Is that too long?
Yeah, there is no circumstance under which those core services at DHS, mental health, and the Healthcare Authority can take $200 million worth of cuts and not come back into special session. We have to have a special session to find new money to be able to backfill the cuts that came from their passage of an unconstitutional bill. To kick it into February would bankrupt those agencies. And it should be noted that when we're talking about $215 million of state appropriated dollars that go to DHS, mental health, and the Healthcare Authority, on average, it was discussed in our meeting today, on average, each one of those state dollars that's appropriated to those core services are matched to a 3-to-1 level, sometimes up to a 9-to-1 level. So just to be conservative on it, if the Republican majority refuses to find $215 million for Healthcare Authority, mental health, and DHS, at the same time it's cutting $630 or $40 million of federal money with it. It's almost $1 billion worth of cuts to healthcare and DHS and mental health if the Republican majority refuses to do their job. Anything else? Thank you all for being here.